do another live stream to kind of go through my painting process for this piece on the new M1 iPad Pro. It's also something where I could kind of answer your questions if you have anything on the iPad Pro about drawing, whatever you want. So I'm just gonna get started. I'll probably stream for like an hour and a half, 2 hours if I can. And so typically what I do for the base colors is I'm going to do a whole outline of the character. And if you have multiple characters, I do multiple outlines. So this is my line work. And then below that, I'd make a new layer. And sometimes with the magic wand tool, it's enough. If it's a very complex illustration with a lot of different lines, like for hair and clothing, the magic wand might not be enough. Hey, thank you so much for coming. I'm doing well, a little bit tired. I think I didn't sleep the best, but that's fine. Then what I'll do, after I've outlined it with the magic wand tool, I take a color that's not going to be in the illustration, something like very vibrant. Oops. You want to invert the selection, and you'll go ahead and get a good base for starting to color. Now, even with the magic wand tool, it's not perfect, so you're going to want to go in there and fix up whatever didn't work out. And sometimes with this, you don't have lines that are completely closed, so you want to go in, close those gaps. And for me, this just makes it really easy to go in there and color each individual section as you need to. Above that, I'll make a layer group, and I'll clip it to this base color. And then from there, you can start to do your individual parts. And because it's clipped to that base layer, anything in that folder isn't going to go outside the base color like guidance lines. So it's a really convenient way to quickly set up your base colors. And Clip Studio is very good for kind of estimating where you want that magic wand tool to go. There are a few gaps, and you can tweak the settings so that maybe you get less gaps. The more you tweak it, the more you might get kind of a bleed out. But generally, it's not too much work to go in there and take care of a few of these little sections. This is kind of something that I don't talk too much about in other videos, just because it's a more monotonous, kind of mundane task as an artist, but it could save you a lot of time if you do this method. And then since I already did the skin, anything below that is going to end up not like covering the skin, so I'll go ahead and do the hair. You'll see, because the layers are clipped in and ordered in this fashion, with the skin being on the very top, anything below that, the skin's going to block out. So it's a pretty convenient way to color. You're going to want to do kind of one of the more important aspects on top, so that the rest of it becomes a lot easier like this. And also, I often will use a different color than what I'm going to use in the final piece, just so that you see how this green and this pink, they're very different, and it's going to be very easy to know when you messed up your base colors there. Like if you end up coloring outside the lines, it'll be very easy to notice that. And in fact, this too. And you'll see there I deleted part of the base color layer. This. But it erased from the top part with the base hair color. And right there, I accidentally turned on the eraser, I think by using the shortcut on the Apple Pencil. It's something I'm still not used to. It can be very convenient in a lot of cases, especially for like sketching, but sometimes you get a missed input like that. Yeah, for Clip Studio Paint, you have a really robust set of keyboard shortcuts and functions, and most of them are industry standard, like Control Z for undo, stuff like that. But I was very used to Paint Tool Sci. It's the software that I used for many years, and I tried my best to kind of replicate that. So, like, I'm not sure if this is from the original Paint Tool Sci or just something that I ended up changing over the years, but I would always use H to mirror my canvas. And it's not something built into Clip Studio Paint, but it's very easy to program in there. And then even brushes, Clip Studio Paint is typically like you have P for pencil and pen and B for brush, but you can assign specific brushes, like I have V is for one custom brush that I have, A is for the opaque one, K is for another custom brush. So those are similar settings that I had on Paint Tool Sci when I was using it. When you use the software for long enough, you tend to kind of get stuck with those keyboard shortcuts just as muscle memory. And it can be very frustrating when you try out a new software and it doesn't let you use those keyboard shortcuts. But now that the base color is done, we can go ahead and change it back to the color that we want to use. And even this you can change later, so I tend to just want to get in there and put down my base color so I could get started with the actual colors, because that's really my favorite part of drawing in general. But I try not to rush. And since we already used those base colors on top of the shirt, it's very easy to lay down a color that's a little bit more broad, not as specific, and it'll align with your line work very easily. But I forgot this section. And there's even some sections of the line work I'd like to change, but uh, when it's something more inside the lines, inside the base area, I tend to go back after I've done a lot of the coloring. So you can see that using this technique, it's relatively quick to put down your base colors, and they're all separate. So now I can go in here and say above the skin, add a new layer and clip it, and oops, and you'll only be able to color within the skin. So for me, it's the best way to do these like smooth anime style illustrations is to use this kind of layering technique. It also helps if you want to go back and change something or fix something, add different layers on top of something. You could do it all fairly easily. And I don't always have a favorite way to start coloring. Sometimes I do the clothes first, sometimes I do the skin. It's just whatever in the moment I feel most compelled to work on. And I think you'll see a lot of artists use this kind of technique of adding depth with different colors on the base of clothing and skin and hair. You can do it at the very beginning of the coloring process or towards the end with like a blending mode. Either way, I do feel like it adds a lot with very little effort. All right, so we're gonna have, let me put this here. We'll go ahead and approach it like this. And the usual way that I color is I use a relatively soft brush, like it's a round brush that doesn't really have too much taper, but it's kind of soft at the beginning and end, and it feels, at least in my mind, like a Copic marker would. And after I lay down some more harsh lines, I'll try to go in there and soften it with either watercolor brush or some of the like blur tools. Oh, thank you so much for the nice comment. I really appreciate all the support that everyone's been giving me lately. It's not easy to try to work on all these videos along with drawings and regular life, so I appreciate any kind of support I can get. Yeah, digital drawing is definitely a little bit different than traditional drawing, and it can take a long time just to understand the basics. But I think if you just approach it from with an open mind and you are open to practicing like different techniques, at first you might just try one layer like as if it's paper, so you do everything on the same layer. But when you realize that digital art allows you to stack different things, and then those different stacks of colors and line work can interact in very unique ways, it opens up a lot of possibilities. But a lot of the basics are the same, and no matter how good your coloring is, or not, no matter how good your coloring is, but if your anatomy and basics aren't up to par, then it doesn't matter how good your coloring is, something's going to look off. And I'm not using any kind of screen protector or paper-like on this iPad Pro. Since the beginning, I've always just liked the kind of plastic on glass. But I've been someone that grew up doing digital art and spent more time doing digital art than traditional art in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of used to this more digital-like feeling. Yeah, and I'm sure for like I think the basic way that a lot of people start coloring or using layers is they'll have like their sketch, and then above that they'll put a multiply layer. And what the multiply layer does is basically let you paint on top of something. It's a very, very basic description of it. And it's very easy to understand. This like complex layering system is something that I've developed in 10 years of drawing. This is not something I've even done maybe within 5 years. And the way I've always painted has been kind of I'll attack the section that I want to in the moment, and then I'll go over to another section and work on that and kind of go back and forth. You'll see a lot of people that just do straight one way. They'll focus on like one thing, finish that, go on to the next one, and I wish I could do that. But I'm constantly trying to move around and adjust different things. Oh, thank you. I think it does mean that my drawings take quite a bit of time, though, and I've constantly been trying to reduce the amount of time it takes. And in a lot of ways, it's still why I haven't done a really comprehensive tutorial, is because I feel like every time I do an illustration, there's something different. I work on it in a different way, and when I finally get down a more like precise method, I'll be able to explain it better. Hey, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to try to do a few more live streams from now on at different times too, whether right now it's more in my morning, afternoon. So some people in certain parts of the world will be able to see it now, and then last time I did it more at my nighttime, so a different section of the world was able to see it. And I think another thing about digital art that's really interesting is that you could use the same tools you use to paint to erase. Like if you see this little kind of checkered pattern, it means that your current brush is letting you erase. And I really, really like that. what's also nice about digital drawing is you can, using layers, separate your colors and change them after the fact. And oftentimes I find myself at first using colors that are not very vibrant, that looked very washed out with little contrast. I don't know why that is. So sometimes at the end of my drawing, I tend to like try to punch that up a bit and make things look more vibrant, more interesting, or more lifelike. No, no problem at all. I'm really always happy to talk about art and technology and different things. And I think for you specifically, you know, it's something that I don't mind spending the time, because I feel like if I had heard different things like that when I got started, it would save me a bunch of time. But honestly, it's very, very difficult to put in the time. The way that I treat practice is kind of like exercise, like drawing practice is like exercise and going to the gym. You might not want to do it, but if you go every day, you know, in a year, and if you go every day, no matter what, even if you're feeling like you're having a bad day or it's raining outside or whatever, if you make that commitment and go, the results might not be apparent right away. But if you look at a picture from the first day you went to the gym, a month later, and then a year later, you could really tell that all that effort made a difference. And everyone's different, of course, but for me at least, I find that the more time I miss, like if I miss 2 or 3 days in a row, it's more difficult for me to go back into drawing a sketch. You know, I feel like, oh, I should do some chores instead, or I find some kind of excuse, even though I love drawing. But if you're constantly doing it every single day, even a little bit, 15, 20, 30 minutes of a sketch, it's enough to keep you kind of in that mindset. And it is very difficult, and, you know, often things come up and that need to be taken care of. As far as what to do as a beginner, you know, one thing that I see a lot of people doing is like they'll try to hide hands in pockets, and I mean I'm kind of hiding this hand here, but I would try to challenge myself to draw these things that are more complicated, because then you'll actually get the practice now. And especially if, say, you want to draw a fantasy story, if your end goal is to do like a fantasy comic, you have to start drawing like all kinds of things, like old wizards and goblins or whatever, because they're intuitively a little bit, I guess, difficult to draw. Like a character like this, younger, like fashionable character, might be easier to draw because it draws from real life. But if you want to do something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, it's good to start practicing now. And so here's a good example of multiply layers. I'm using the same exact color as the shirt here, but when I paint with it, you see that it's a darker shade. And it's a good way just to kind of start coloring without thinking too much. You know that you're going to have a darker shade right off the bat. And so I have here, when I did the sketch, I like to occasionally put down some colors that I want to use in the way that I want to use them. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to see if I can think of something a little bit better for what to do to get started. One thing that always stood out that a mentor of mine recommended I do is draw thumbnails. And what thumbnails are these very, very tiny, like, you know, like, let's say, you know, stuff like that, but with maybe a little bit more detail. But they're more zoomed out. You know, you're not going to have all the character details. You just want to do these smaller illustrations to get used to different poses and kind of how the way clothing and anatomy interacts. Yeah, it's like a stick figure that's a little bit more complex. And honestly, if you get the stick figure down, I mean, I don't know if I have it here. No, because I started this illustration in Procreate, so I don't have the base readily available, but I started with just more figures. And sometimes people use a stick figure or something a little bit more complex, but in the end, if you break down your illustration to figures, I feel like you're going to be much more satisfied with the end result. Hey, thank you so much for coming. No problem. I'm going to be here for an hour or two, just kind of painting and talking. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And so with clothing, like, I feel like I have a better grasp on clothing. That if you think about the light coming from here, this fold is going to have the darkest section, and then around it, it's going to be lighter as the clothing kind of ripples like that. And so if something around here, where it's coming into the fold, is best to blend in, and even at the kind of base of the fold, sometimes you have a alternate color, as it were. Yeah, the stream stays up, and then this drawing, once I'm done with it, since I'm drawing in Clip Studio Paint, there's going to be a time-lapse replay, which is faster with less commentary, but it'll be available. No, thank you for the support. I really appreciate everyone's support. Thank you. And then for clothing, hey, thank you so much for coming. For clothing, I like to try to look at real life as much as I can, to learn about folds and different things like that. So you can take a picture of yourself wearing kind of something similar to what you want your characters to be wearing in the pose that you want. And it's a good way to understand how things interact with each other. The thing about a more anime illustration is you want to simplify things. Everything, you know, you could draw this very realistic. And for an anime illustration, you're trying to find the right balance between simplifying things while maintaining some realism, I guess. At least that's the way that I approach it. Of course, there are some styles and artists that do stuff that's completely out there from reality, and that's great too. But even them, I'm sure that you could find things based in reality, aspects of their style and illustration. Like even monsters or whatever, people will look up different animals or maybe even robots they base on animals and stuff. So it's good to take from real life. No, no problem. You can ask anytime. You know, the I would say in general, you're probably fine not upgrading just because, or it also depends on what you want to do. If you want to do 2D illustration, I'm sure that the 2011 version is totally fine. If you want to do more 3D stuff or maybe do some gaming or photo video editing, the story might be different. But in general, that 1 year difference right now isn't going to make much of a difference. We'll see if the M1 chip allows different kinds of apps to be developed. Okay, mostly drawing manga and taking notes. I mean, those tasks are very stuff that I've done since the first iPad Pro with kind of similar results. So I'm confident that even the 2020 or the 2020 version would be able to handle it just fine. The reason I bought this M1 iPad Pro is because I feel that as a lot of Apple's development heads towards the M1, we might get new features that are exclusive to M1. It hasn't happened yet, so I say I guess there's no reason to upgrade right now. I would wait until there were some definitive answers, and Apple has a conference called WWDC that's happening June 7th, I believe, and there we'll be able to find out some more info as to like whether M1 is going to have some cross-platform compatibility with like iPad OS and Mac OS, or if maybe some Mac apps will be able to come to iPad. And it's possible those apps will be able to be used on an older iPad, but it's less likely, I guess. You would need to, I guess, emulate the M1 chip, which would be pretty taxing. So right now, it's probably best just to use what you have. But the other thing that you brought up that's interesting about Apple products is that they hold their value very well. So if you tried to sell your 2020 iPad Pro, you probably only have to pay, $200 or $300 for the new one, maybe $400. I'm not sure exactly what the market is now, but that is an option with Apple products. Is you can upgrade fairly easily with very little cost after you made that initial investment. So it's up to you. I guess I would wait until WWDC just to see if there's any kind of really important update. But Apple's always tough. Like I would, I really want the M1, or like an M1 iPad Mini 6 would be amazing, or iPad Pro Mini. And that is something that I would definitely pick up just because I'm such a big fan of that form factor. Multitasking on the 12-inch has been really nice. And I've seen on other videos saying that a lot of stuff stays in RAM. Like, basically anything that I've opened since I got it has stayed in RAM, which is pretty amazing. So multitasking is great. Yeah, the Mini 2, I mean, it's unlikely that I would have the M1 chip, I guess. If it did, that'd be pretty wild. But supporting the Apple Pencil 2 would be great. A bigger screen would be great. And USB-C would actually be one of my top features, I think, at this point, But thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves and to chat with me. Yeah, it's a lot better than last time I streamed. I was being silent, waiting for people to talk or whatever, but I'm trying to take advantage here and work through my own processes. It's another thing that I recommend for people, maybe as you get a little bit more into drawing, like not at first, because it could be a lot of either pressure or just inconvenience, is to record yourself drawing and go back. Like, if you watch yourself draw, even a time lapse that's sped up, you can realize, oh wow, like why did I spend so much time doing this one thing when in the end it had very little impact on the overall piece or something like that. I don't recommend it at first just because one of the best ways to learn is to reduce the friction between getting started. So no matter what you want to do, if there's a lot of barriers in the way of you getting started, you're probably not going to put in the time that's necessary to get to the point that you should be at. Yeah, Lightning. I mean, it's interesting. I remember some, accessories that came out when Lightning's all we had, but USB-C is so much more open, and just from a charging standpoint, I'd like to have one cable or whatever. I mean, in general, we're not born with the innate ability to do much of anything as far as like artistic stuff. I guess music and different things could be more, what would you say, like built into us. But I'm terrible at music, so you never know. And if it's something that you enjoy, you just have to find the way that you can enjoy it at the level you want to enjoy it. I think a lot of times people also, whether they see videos or they want to be a certain thing, like they have this idea of what they should be, and it's me included. These kind of ideas that are based from like societal things or from people that we see, we try to be similar, but what we really want or what really fits our life right now might be totally different. And so those ideas kind of clash sometimes, and it can be very frustrating because you have this like, this is what I want to be, but it's just not either feasible or doesn't make sense in the moment. Kind of like, especially if you think about it, that we're often influenced by a previous generation. So my favorite artists are now like, they're successful, but they've been drawing for 30 or 40 years. And when they started, it was completely different than now. And even as I described to you, that you're starting now when there's so many more options for drawing tablets and so many resources. But when I got started, you kind of only had a few different options and less resources. So kind of every generation has a different approach, and we're looking back at the previous generation wanting to do something that is just not really like possible now, I guess, because times have changed. And I think, yeah, I mean, I was using the original iPad Pro as kind of a Wacom replacement for a long time. I think the Apple Pencil is one of the most accurate tools for drawing. Even Wacom has some like parallax issues, and it's not that bad, especially in the center. Like most people, we're drawing in the center of an iPad or of a screen, and so parallax along the corners isn't a big deal. Of course, Wacom, one of the better things is just the feeling of the overall feeling of the experience. I think the feeling of the pen tip on the screen, and there's something magical about it. But I feel like the iPad is a good compromise because you're getting this all-in-one package, this device that can do so much in such a small package compared to Wacom. It's portable and standalone. Wacom does have their standalone tablets running Windows, but after using some of those, the Cintiq Companion, they're not really portable like the iPad is. The iPad, I could kind of take away this keyboard and still draw with different touch gestures and things like that. But the Cintiq Companion really needs a keyboard. It's much bigger, and the battery life is not that like portable. So it's just to address some of the iPad Pro 12.9-inch M1 2021 like issues. I don't really see much of a glow around the corners. It's obviously very hard to tell on a video. You can see kind of like a glow or like a shadow around the corners, but when you're focused in on a drawing, it's not something that comes up much. And then I haven't had that kind of blooming issue. Like even, I'll try to show it. Again, it's like you're watching a video of a screen, it's not the best. But this is on full brightness, and I don't really see a glow. Of course, you're gonna have some contrast with this because you have the darkest color and the lightest color available. But for my model, I haven't had any issues. It could be something about different manufacturers making the panels or the LEDs. Some of them might have, certain defects or something. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I've used not the Mobile Studio, the Cintiq Companion, the first one, because I've been someone that wanted so badly to draw anywhere or have even something that I could work on my desk and then take it somewhere and come back to my desk. So the original Cintiq Companion was really appealing to me. And I used it a lot, and I do still find it to be a great device. But with iPads and other more mobile devices available, especially once Clip Studio came out for iPad, it changed the way that I work. Before Clip Studio, I was going back and forth. I was doing my sketches on Procreate, which was fine. And then I would try to line and color them on either Paint Tool SI or Clip Studio on my desktop or on the Cintiq Companion. I really like clothes too. It's something that I tried to study on my own, and I think clothes and hair are the two things I really like to paint, and I spend a lot of time doing it. And so one trick that I've been using lately is I'll have multiply layer at like 50% with one color, and then I'll have another multiply layer at 50%. And it lets you do these really nice, smooth kind of blending of the same, using the same color, you could get this really, really nice tonality. But I like to do it at 100% first. You could also do the inverse of like using 100% on a multiply layer, make a new layer above that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. And use the base color like this as well on a non-multiply layer. Both of them work. Lately, just to simplify my drawing process, I've been trying to just do one layer of the main shadows, and then from there I'll kind of complicate it by stacking stuff. Really, I've never, because I don't do too many comics on Clip Studio Paint, and I've never tried to work on something with multiple people, but huh. So can you tell me a little bit about that process? Oh, it was just released on PCIC. Yeah, another thing that's really impressive about Clip Studio is just the way that Celsius has been supporting it and adding features like the time lapse and other things. I remember I was using Manga Studio or Illa Studio and different things made by Celsius before Clip Studio, and the base is very similar, but now, I mean, Clip Studio just has so much functionality not seen in other apps. I mean, there's so much stuff that I haven't even explored, like animation, the 3D modeling, and like posing, and um, I wish I had the time to really dig into it. But it's becoming a very comprehensive app for a lot of different kinds of people, which is really interesting because I feel like apps up until now have been like very specialized, doing one thing good and trying to do it as best as they can. But I hope everyone's been having a good day. They're gonna have a good weekend and all. I'm gonna try to put out a video pretty soon, whenever I get a chance. It's not an iPad one. It's actually about a camera that I've been using to film stuff on the channel. And I want to expand the channel a little bit more to cover kind of other aspects of digital art because I do photography and video as well. And I've been kind of thinking maybe if I should start a different channel or whatever, but there are a lot of overlaps with photo, video, and drawing as far as the technology and some of like the software and different things like that. So you might see some more other kinds of digital art on the channel. Yeah, I mean it's interesting that they went with the subscription. Obviously, they're making a lot of money off of it, but they're also putting out so many new features. I don't know, maybe there's a correlation between that because they were able to start doing a subscription model, they're able to put more features out there. And I really, a lot of people complain about it. I don't mind paying for it because it's like one cup of coffee from Starbucks a month if you just do the was it EX or Pro or the lesser version. It's one of the best drawing softwares ever on a really great platform, and I'm kind of willing to pay that tax, but I can understand why it's frustrating. But again, like I spent so much time and money like 10, 15 years ago trying to draw outside of my house, and it was just like impossible. I would buy janky tablets that had like ridiculous processors that couldn't even run like Paint Tool SAI well, and the pen was terrible, and you needed to be plugged in all day. And this is a far cry from that, and it's worth it for me. Yeah, I mean, the annual plan for Clip Studio on the lower version is like, what, $50 maybe or something like that. I understand, but if you want to draw professionally, or if that's your aspiration, then we have to try to find a place to sacrifice, whether it's skipping out on some other kind of like luxury or toy or whatever for this really great software. And like I said, they're really putting a lot of effort into updating and changing things. I understand that Procreate is a one-time payment, and they also put a lot of time and effort into updates. So it's a valid argument, and one that I understand from a lot of different people. I haven't really had a chance to test out any Galaxy products for drawing, and I really wish I could. You know, I haven't really made any money off the channel, and reviewing a product takes a long time for me, especially something that, say, like I just want to review it and sell it, or I rented it or something. It's a little tough for me to justify when I have other work and different products that I might buy actually for work that I can review, kind of like a two birds with one stone type of situation. If there was a way to get my hands on it, I would definitely try it out though. No, thanks for stopping by. I'll have this up so you can watch the rest, and I'll probably do another stream pretty soon. So thanks for coming by. But what's really nice now about Clip Studio Paint being on pretty much every platform, it does give me some confidence, or not confidence, but it allows me to feel okay about like reviewing the Chromebook Duet. If I had to like start over and find different software tested, and I try to be really thorough with the review and give a good perspective for artists, it's a lot of work without even drawing, you know, like kind of doing things that I might not enjoy as much just to get to the drawing part. And that can be tough. But having Clip Studio available on different platforms now means that I can explore a little bit on some of the platforms, either exclusive apps or alternatives, but I know that my main software is there, and it gives me a lot of like comfort in trying to review different products. So it is a possibility. Just have to get my hands on it, and I need some time as well. But hopefully, between some of the recent videos and expanding into more like photo and video topics, should bring in a lot more people and should help a lot with the channel, so that then I do have more opportunities to talk about other products. But really, there's a lot that I want to do beyond just reviews and videos. It's just it's tough to find the time to do everything and kind of plan for bigger projects. I finished a comic uh, like April. It was for a contest on Pixiv, and I haven't posted anything about it or uh, talked about it because the contest is still being judged, like kind of 2 months later. Uh, so I don't want to accidentally like breach that like terms of entering and disqualify myself if it's still going on. Once it's done, and especially if the result is good, I would definitely talk about it. And I would love to work on more comics, but that is a real process. I've done a few in my life, and it's a lot of work. Like I think that's why I got into more illustration is because I wanted to do comics, but they're difficult and there's a lot of different things involved with it, and illustration can be done in a few days. So you see the results much faster. Yeah, it was 10 pages. I did it on Clip Studio Paint. It was really nice. And I used to do more comics and would even like print them for a small book or something. Yeah, I did the silent manga is really good. I actually have an idea for one that I really want to do, but just kind of I want to take my time with it and do it properly, and now's not the time for me. But the silent, I love those. I love movies, and I think you could show a lot with just kind of a visual medium. Wow, everyone's doing comics. That's great. I want to find a way to do comics more consistently, like 4 comas or something that I can actually like do it. Because working on just say like a 30-page one shot or something is just you're gonna you're probably gonna hate yourself by the end of it. Yeah, they do. There's a few different silent manga contests that they do like annually, and I do recommend it if you have a chance. And I do recommend contests like on Pixiv and other platforms. I mean, uh, I will look typically at the top at the prompt or at the topic, and if it's something that I feel like I can have some input on, have a really powerful message through a comic, I'll try to do it. It's a good reason to like actually do comics. Yeah, it's everything, from developing characters or depending on how far you want to go for a one shot or for a contest. But uh, I know like videos take a long time and there's a lot of planning and different things, but a comic is like tough for me. And I guess it's kind of the feedback also on a comic is probably less. Like, one thing that's great about YouTube is that you get a lot of feedback and you know that what you're doing has an impact or is helping someone, or at least that people are interested in watching it. But a comic, sometimes, you know, you have like zero feedback. You have no idea. Or a contest in general. That I've entered different contests and it's been a long time since I've even made any like progress, but you never know, you know, if a judge is trying to fight for you or if nobody cares about what you did or what, you know. But still, I recommend doing contests if you can, because it gives you a good reason to draw, you know. Sometimes we don't know what to work on, and it gives you a good reason to pick up the pen. And also, I think I'm just such a perfectionist as far as always wanting to do something of this scale. That's kind of the problem, that I wanted to do comics, but since I got into illustration and went like deep into illustration, it's hard for me to go backwards in a way that anything less than this level of like, not quality necessarily, but this level of like effort into each panel, you know, it's just impossible, but it's what I want to do. So I have to really drastically change like my expectations. Yeah, it's hard even, you know, maybe you have this good idea and the storyboards are good or the sketch is good, but then you start to get lining and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I getting myself into? Like 3 weeks of this thing. But I try every time to do a different like process. Like, I don't know if maybe starting at the end, if it's a comic that obviously has like a relatively quick ending, like a one shot, you know, do you start at the end and work backwards? Because you need the hook to be good. The ending is, I mean, of course you want the ending to have an impact, but if nobody's reading the beginning, then it doesn't matter how good the ending is. So maybe the way to do it is to work backwards, at least for now, to get practice, or it's just about doing it enough times, you know, that your masterpiece, you know, is only going to be good if you did 40 pieces, I mean 40 comics that weren't good at all or something. Yeah, I mean, especially with a silent comic, you have to convey a lot with just visuals. Also, a lot of times with my line work, I add details that I feel like kind of constrict the actual line work when I get to it. In the moment, it feels good to have that base, but a lot of times I find that simpler line work will allow me to really bring out a lot of details in the coloring. So don't be afraid to go back and change something. I mean, it's the same thing with YouTube videos as well, that you know, you might make something really, really interesting, but if the hook wasn't good, or if there just wasn't, if there was something there that didn't grab the audience at first, at the first like 30 seconds, no matter how good the rest of it is, it's probably not going to do as well. And I think that's kind of the more like harsh reality of actually trying to do something professionally, is that very few of us get to do our like ideal project, like some director that has their full vision completed, whether that's good or bad. We often have to adjust to whatever is going to allow us to do the actual artwork or have some level of success, or monetary or like otherwise. And it can be very hard if you're working by yourself, and many of us don't have the privilege of having someone kind of edit our work or take a look in a very critical way. And it takes a long time for us to realize our own kind of, not necessarily mistakes, but something that we could have done much better. To self-realize that takes so much longer than if you have someone looking on from the outside with a lot of experience. But I think in a lot of ways, some of that is what it means to be a professional artist, is the need to self-realize and adjust to what's going to let you continue to live off of your work. But I think we can learn to be more objective with our work, and I think it took me a long time to do that with my drawings. You see some of my earlier work, like the coloring, you could see that maybe the coloring was there or whatever, that I am the same artist as far as the colors, but the anatomy was terrible, and I would just rush right into colors. But I would never be satisfied at the end of the drawing because everything else was terrible. And it took a long time for me to kind of say, all right, this is what I have to do, is practice these more fundamental aspects of drawing, and only then will I be remotely satisfied. And even still, like, I feel like if I were to evaluate my drawings kind of from a third person perspective, I would say that I spend a lot of time on the colors, adding few percentage points, I guess, to like how good it is. I could stop probably like in a little bit and just move on, and it'll be just as good as it is when it's done. And so you have like these diminishing returns where any more effort is only going to add little value for how much you put in. But, you know, if it's something that you enjoy, you gotta find your level of enjoyment, I guess. That you can spend a lot of time working on one piece or try to do lots of different pieces, or do it as a hobby or do it as a profession, you know, that will color the way that you work. But I find more and more trying to be professional that you need to kind of separate yourself from the work and make decisions that are not exactly what you want, but in the end it'll benefit you just kind of have to put up with it. It's not a personal I just kind of am used to the way it is. When I got the first iPad Pro, I never used it, and I got used to that, and I've been drawing digitally for a long time, so I think I'm just used to the plastic on glass feeling. But I do have something that I'm going to try and make a video about. Let's see. I picked up, this is a silicone pen tip. The company or the product is called Pen Tips. And I think one reason why I don't like the screen protectors is I've just had bad experiences in the past with trying to peel them off. I know it's gotten a lot better. Like I know that the technology has gotten a lot better, but this is something I'm still testing out. And one thing right off the bat that I like about it is just that you can take it off. Yeah. So, you know, expect a video soon or whenever I can get around to it. What's good is that they're, you know, relatively inexpensive. And when you don't want to use them, you don't have to. For coloring so far, I found that they're pretty nice. For sketching, it depends on what tool you're using. Like it can kind of feel a bit strange using a pencil with this, just because it has like it doesn't feel like graphite on paper. So there could be kind of this like weird separation between the feeling that you're having and what you're actually doing. But I'm sure it just takes some time to get used to. But for more of like a digital brush, like a Photoshop round brush, it actually does have a nice feel. Like it feels more representative of what like a Photoshop round brush would feel like in real life. So I wouldn't say that it affects accuracy as far as like kind of introducing a parallax, but you are kind of separating the tip from the screen a little bit. And with even a line like this, it's fine. But when I was doing line work, I tried to avoid using it. I don't know if it was just the feeling, or maybe you have to kind of break these in too. It might be possible that the silicone needs to be worn down a little bit just to kind of get it to have a better feeling. But I can't really speak too much about the pen tips just because I haven't used it enough time to have a good opinion about it. Oof, boy. I think I slept really weird and my back is hurting a little bit, especially with this like setup. I tend to draw with the Pomodoro technique. It's another thing I want to talk about in a video where I draw for like 25 minutes and then I take a 5-minute break. It helps me be less perfectionist. Like let's say for this like the top, I'm going to just spend 25 minutes on this. So I color it and I stop after 25 minutes. It gives me a good limit so I don't go back and forth, adding minimal value. It also just helps me take a break. My eyes, my hand, my mind. But on stream, it's not as good to take a 5-minute break every 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Like when I'm going optimally on kind of those techniques, I really feel good about how I'm drawing and the results, is I'm not spending so much time on something and I actually finish it versus like some of the stuff that you've seen on the channel, it's still kind of sitting around waiting to be finished or waiting to put those finishing touches on it so I could post it somewhere. But I'm curious actually to see what those watching use, I guess, for their like publishing their work. That Instagram for me was the place that I went to for kind of the end result a lot of times. But lately it's just been really bad. I tend to like even lose followers when I post something, or just the reach isn't there. And I've been focusing a lot more on YouTube, so for me the end result has been YouTube lately. But I'm curious to see what other people are doing. Yeah, like I also saw some growth from TikTok. um it just depends, I guess, on what you're trying to do, but I want to do some like short tutorial type things. Yeah, I mean Instagram is just very weird because I would like 2 or 3 years ago it was doing very well for me. And I wasn't even like doing it consistently or anything. I kind of tend to be the type of person that when I'm done with something, I'm tired and I've been working on it for a long time, so I'm just not even interested in sharing it too much. And I feel bad if people do want to see it and all, but it's just like a personal feeling. I don't like thinking of a description. I don't like putting all the effort into that. But I like videos. I don't know. I like to express myself more in the video form, so I'm glad I kind of finally ended up on YouTube. And I do encourage anyone in a similar position to try a different approach, I guess. And whether it's TikTok or YouTube or another platform, I have seen a few other kind of social media sites aimed at artists coming out lately. I think if anything, these pen tips they add a little bit of friction. So if you find yourself kind of having issues stopping or just find the plastic on glass slippery, it could be a good solution. But again, for me, I've always been fine with this, and I do like just the ability to slip it on and off quickly. You know, I actually like I have a TikTok and I've been trying, when I can to put something up. I guess it's kind of funny because YouTube is a video platform obviously and so is TikTok, but they're just so different. And I like a more like a video essay versus like a vlog or like a time lapse by itself. But I mean DeviantArt still relevant. I have one and I want to put more stuff on there just because it's free and you have a big audience of people, and it's a good way to just get people's eyes on the videos as well. But one thing that I've always kind of been, uh, I guess, having trouble with on any social media is that I don't really do much fan art. I say that as I draw Asuka, but this is like the first time I've done fan art in a long time, and it just it doesn't do as well. That you do one fan art and it does like great, and everything else is like barely anyone sees it, and I don't know how someone should feel about that, but it's often quite disappointing, I guess. The most challenging subject for me to draw. Like I guess characters of different ages. It's something that I covered in a recent video, but I think we all kind of get settled into doing the thing that we like. and even just in general, there's not that much like diversity as far as characters in a lot of anime and stuff. I mean, there is, but just the characters that we like and that we draw or whatever, I guess, tend to be of a similar age group, and it's something that I want to try to branch out and do more of. But I like, like mechanical things and coloring mechanical things, kind of doing other drawings. Background, sometimes I have trouble with. If I really spent time, like from the beginning, knowing that I'm going to do a certain background, it's not as bad. But trying to add one in after the fact can be a big pain for me. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I'm glad that you're doing original work and not just original work, but comics, of course. And I'm sure that the feeling. Just it's kind of a weird thing, when you put in a lot of effort and someone that does a lot of fan art can be a lot more successful in a lot of ways. And it's hard, as much as you try to stay positive or think or know that what you're doing is what you want to be doing, it can be difficult at times, and we all just kind of want to find our place and do what we should be doing. And comics is something that most people can't do. Even the people that want to do it, a lot of them just can't finish one. They'll start one, they'll start character sheets, they'll do storyboards, whatever, but you never see a page from them. So it's something that you should be proud of. And I do find that stuff like the contest and other things, like if you just try to draw a comic, like just say, oh, I have this great idea for a story or whatever, with no structure around it. If it's just like, I have this idea and I'm going to just start page one drawing, it's often disastrous. You need like a page limit so that you can encapsulate the story and take out unnecessary elements and make it easier on yourself. And you really want to plan before you get into it, because if not, you're going to hate the process. Hey, thank you so much for coming. I mean, I like cars, and I've tried my best to draw them in the past. It's tough. But anything with practice, you know, if you spend enough time doing something, you learn kind of the most optimal way to do it, I suppose. Yeah, I'm living in Japan, and I have JLPT N2. I took it years ago, which is like a proficiency test N2 is for like college level. So I've been speaking Japanese for a long time. But at the beginning, obviously, it's hard to pick up. I found that after about 6 months of heavy studying and like immersion, I was able to really pick up the absolute basics, but then went out and started talking and was able to improve a lot. And you find that, I guess, with Japanese, once you actually get talking, there's a lot of words and phrases that are used consistently. So if you pick those up, you'll actually be able to have like some conversations with people, and then from there you learn what's more like native, what people actually use. But more than English, like English is, I don't know, you see people here trying to learn English, and I think English is so difficult to learn because every region, every person has their own way of speaking. And I do my best to try to speak in a very like easy to understand way, but there's so much slang, there's so much like just regional speak. Um, as far as hands, I mean, I would just, draw a few hands every single day. Like, I want to make a video about how I practice, and with that method, I basically do like 5 or 6 drawings a day, sketches, nothing too big. And if you do that for enough time, you're gonna learn how to do hands or cars or anything. It's just the first week, the first month is gonna be tough. But you do see progress, especially if you do it on paper. And my dream as a kid was also to be a manga artist, and I went to school here for manga, and I've done a few different ones. It was like not a temporary school; it was a short-term school, vocational school type thing, only for 6 months, and it's hard. No matter how much you practice, there's a lot of luck and timing involved in any kind of art form trying to be professional, and it's I think a lot of people give up. I mean, I haven't really been doing it, so in a way, I've given up on that dream as well. And I think also our ideals change. When I was growing up, my dream was to be published in a magazine here. But now there's so many more options. When I was a kid, we didn't have all this online stuff and online comics and all. And really, the goal should be to get your voice and your work out there rather than being specifically in certain medium or platforms. And you have to find a way to be happy with what you're doing regardless of the response, because I could have 1 million subscribers or 0 and I'd still be doing the same thing. And obviously, it changes what you can do with your life and everything, but the base should be the same. But I totally understand, because I had a huge dream to be a manga artist here, and it's changed and it's evolved. And even language is the same thing, that if you put in enough time and effort uh, consistently, I feel like you're going to get good with it. But I think the thing with language is that if you don't have an opportunity to practice speaking, it becomes the hurdle becomes much more difficult. So if you have some sort of community in your area, or if you're immersing yourself in Japan, it does become a lot easier. But now with COVID and everything, I'm not leaving the house as much, and you kind of lose it sometimes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you spend 6 years doing something and you get good at it, right? And there's no, you can start um, today, and it's a good day to start. And I find having goals with everything too, that like with Japanese, my goal was that I wanted to, or one of the goals at least, was to actually read manga and understand anime in Japanese, because I felt like at the time at least the translations were not as good, or you would lose something in translation, and I wanted to be able to understand exactly what the author was writing. So every step I made, I kind of, if I was able to read one page, it's a big step. But then in a month, you realize I read a chapter, and then it snowballs from there. So having a visible goal like that is great. And the same thing works for drawing. And it's not always necessary. Some people, when they go to the gym or whatever, and exercise, they have a goal of a certain weight or a certain like muscle mass, and that's great as well. Or just knowing that persistently going is going to help improve your life in general could be enough. Yeah, but going out of your comfort zone is very difficult, especially if you do something a lot. Like if you draw a lot in a certain way, trying to change that, it it feels uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable. And I think also people tend to go about things in the wrong way. Like with the gym example, people will go and they'll go all out for 3 days or something and get tired and then not go out for 2 months or something. And there's no real benefit with that. So with hands and drawing cars or whatever, you shouldn't just try to do the best thing you can do in the moment. Try very simple, either drawing from your own hand or figure drawing, and experiment and try to see kind of what works and what doesn't work and ease into it. But I think it's hard because really you tend not to see people's mistakes and failings or whatever. Like you just see the end result of what people have done for many years, and multiply that by millions of people when you're dealing with something online. uh, but something I've been thinking about lately is kind of just the luck kind of involved with being successful. And there's a lot of people at a high level when it comes to drawing and art, but a select few get uh, a lot of eyes on their work at a certain time. And so it might just be kind of a matter of time that if you kind of roll the dice enough times, eventually they're going to come up like in the number combination that works for you or whatever. Yeah, the entry I did was 10 pages with dialogue. The theme, there was like a theme, and so I tried to write something, I guess, about how I was feeling in the moment, but based on the theme, like projecting my feelings onto the theme. And once it's over, I'd love to translate it to English, or change the dialogue to English and post it or talk about it. But one thing that I have kind of realized once I came to Japan is you think, oh, you want to do manga or comics or whatever, you got to come to Japan. But it's a very difficult thing to do, especially trying to do comics and different things in Japanese and all that. It's a huge other skill set beyond just the drawing and the ability to write an interesting story with interesting characters and everything. When you come here, you find that there's a lot of interest in artists, artwork, comics from other parts of the world. So I actually think that a better approach would be to just do your work the way that you would do it in whatever language is most comfortable for you, and try to, become a popular comic book artist. And it's not unlikely nowadays that your work would be translated and sold here, and you could have an interesting base here, and then maybe one day after all that success you can try to work with publishers and stuff here. Yeah, this is a pretty powerful tablet. And I'm going to be testing it out with a lot of layers in a future piece. The pen is like $150 US, something like that. I mean, there's select shops that sell American comics and all. I don't know if they're translated or not, but just in general, foreign media, comics, movies, books, anything are very popular here. They do have to be translated in a lot of cases, but even still, if someone has something interesting, I think, I guess what I mean is that if your end goal is to be published in Japan, you probably have a better chance of doing something in your current country, in your current language, than trying to learn Japanese, move here, try to be successful here, and all that. And in general, I mean, just being able to prove that you can work and publish work in a manner that was successful in one country means that people are going to be much more likely to hire you or work with you here. Well, the first gen, you have to be careful at least with the Apple Pencil. Uh, the new one, the like the iPads that work with the second generation don't work with the first generation. At least that's what I believe. And vice versa, that first generation Pencil iPad Pro or iPad won't work with the second one. And talking about kind of large illustrations like that, it's something I do want to test out with the new iPad Pro. It feels like I'll be able to draw something on a much bigger canvas with higher DPI, so it might lead to more interesting kind of prints and different things that you could do. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Right now, I mean, I haven't been watching or reading too much, but I really like Golden Kamuy. That's probably the thing that I've been following the most lately. Yeah, I really like Golden Kamuy. No, no problem. Feel free to talk in any way that you want. No problem. If you feel more comfortable speaking in Japanese, that's fine as well. Um, well, the iPad, even though the lowest model, like the lowest spec model, might cost 800, it's hard for me to recommend it because 128 gigs of storage is going to go pretty quick between the OS and some drawing apps and some drawings and all. It feels like it'll be kind of uncomfortable. Yeah, I recommend at least the 256. And there are different plans that let you upgrade, whatever works for you. Just that you have to be careful with the pencil because I'm pretty sure, and I can test it out later, but that you need to get the right one for the right iPad. Like the Mini uses the first generation, while the new iPad Pro with the M1 chip uses the second generation. Well, an iPad versus a MacBook Air, they're going to be very different just because obviously you have the Apple Pencil on an iPad and you don't have that with a MacBook. It depends on what you want to do. If you want to do more photo and video work, maybe the MacBook is better. But if you're trying to draw and all, I find the iPad is one of the best, most accurate tools for drawing. But it can suffer in different places as far as like kind of productivity and other things like that. So you just have to balance it out and see what you really need. No, thank you so much for coming, and I'm gonna have more videos out soon. I want to try to do more live streams, so feel free to pass by anytime. And I do, I haven't been published in Japan in any like major way, so it's hard to say. I don't have like a first-hand experience with that, but I think that in a way, a lot of it is the connections that you have and how you can kind of get your work in the eye in front of someone. So if the way that you can get your work in front of someone is through YouTube videos in English or through some publications in English, it's a good way to start to try to get a base and try to get yourself known. Hey, thanks so much for coming by. You know, it might run games better than the Air, but also it doesn't have Mac OS, so I guess kind of the games that you can play are limited to what's on the App Store. Um, and it just depends on what you want to do. Like, I know people that have been published, have their one shots published, but you know they don't get a consistent job off of it, and that's probably more normal, especially now. I mean, there's so many outlets for comics and all that. You might have a better time just doing something for an online source. Oh, well, I hope you're feeling better, and please do get some rest. And I'll be doing some more streams, and you can catch the replay later. Thank you so much for passing by, though. But, you know, I mean, especially now that if you have a ton of followers on Instagram, it doesn't matter what country you're trying to get published in. It's a good tool for like leveraging why you should be published. Oh, thank you so much for subscribing, and I'm definitely going to have a lot more videos out soon, so I hope you'll watch them. I've tried just a little bit of gaming on the iPad. I play Magic Arena, but that's the only game that I really play, and it looks good, and it's a lot better than on the Mini. So if the game, you know, if the games that you want to play are on the App Store, you might have a good time with the iPad, but there's a lot of games that are not on the App Store. So I do have some videos on how I color hair. I have one tutorial on Clip Studio Paint, and I might or might not stream the coloring of the hair. I got to get going in a little bit. But I do have plenty of videos on that. I'll go through it really quick before I have to go. Let me see what else. You know, I think as far as whether your drawings are good or not, manga also has a lot of like story elements that can be important, and oftentimes a lot of things could be just connections. That if you've done some one shots, you have some connections with editors and other people, and you say I have this idea, they might be willing to kind of bet on you and see if your work will be any good, you know. So in general, I think the more work you put out, the more chances that someone's going to notice with the power to get you published. So what I do with hair tends to be that I have my base hair layer. On top of that, I'll have a layer with a darker color. So my base layer is going to be like my first highlight layer. On top of that, I have another color. And then I erase to reveal that highlight. And what that allows you to do is then if you lock this layer, you could quickly add some details like this. And it's been a good way for me to paint hair. But I have a more in-depth tutorial on my channel, and like I said, I might stream the coloring of the hair, and if not, I'll definitely have a time lapse up of the whole thing. And as far as drawing a hand, you know, you tend to start off like this would be the palm. Sorry, I don't know if you were able to hear that, but you tend to draw shapes. You know, you have the palm, and then you could do the fingers, and you could do them in different ways like that, or just two. Because, you know, if you think about it, the finger bends in two different places, but sometimes people just want to simplify. And then you can do kind of and then once you have your simple form, you could go in there and make something more complex, maybe with more details. You know. But everything can be broken down into shapes. So, you know, you don't just want to draw a hand like trying to guesstimate it. And I mean, with enough practice, you could do it. And I think that's kind of the end goal, is to be able to just do it without any of those blocks and whatever. But it's much more difficult. So you want to go in there and kind of have a shape. You know, it's something that I'd be interested in trying, but I just don't have that much time right now to dedicate to a comic. But if I have a good idea and something that would last a little while, you know, I might try my hand at it. I don't know. I mean, there's so much that you can do. At the moment, YouTube is doing really well for me, and it's giving me a lot of reason to draw and a lot of motivation to draw and do different things, and it's getting my art seen. So I'm sticking with that right now. But in the future, I could definitely see trying to work on a web comic or something like that. Oh, thank you so much. I'm also gonna get going pretty soon, and you can see the replay of this on my channel, and I'll have another stream, I'm sure, sometime soon. So if there's any kind of final questions you want to ask, I'll try to answer them, and then I'll get going. But you know, all that stuff about publishing and all is conjecture. I don't have too much experience with it, so but I have experience in other kind of creative fields, and if they're anything like drawing and all, connections are a big deal. You know, showing up and being able to do your work, that I feel like a lot of people, they might be very talented, but they might not be able to actually like produce work in a way that's reasonable for publication, whether it's online or print. If you want to draw, obviously the pen is a big deal. What I found about Apple's Magic Keyboard, like the one that attaches to the iPad, the angle of drawing can only be like 60 or 70 degrees, which is not that helpful for drawing. For typing or photo editing, you know, it might be fine, but I found that to be very disappointing. And the keyboard, the other thing about the keyboard, I mean, if you're going to be using it at home or whatever, you could just use some Bluetooth keyboard and get a similar effect. You know, it's depending on the games. Some games I think will let you use like keyboard shortcuts, but you might not be able to reprogram them, and others might not have anything. You could use a Bluetooth controller in a lot of cases, but again, it's a case by case basis on the game itself. So you should check with the games that you want to play. Like check out the forum or other people talking about the game. as far as drawing software, there's a few drawing apps that will let you customize the keyboard shortcuts, but a lot of them will not. I'm glad that I could help, and if you have any questions, you could feel free to leave a comment on any video, and I get back to you right away. Thank you so much. I'm also going to go ahead and head out. If you want to see the rest of this, please let me know, and I'll try to either do it on a stream or just do a time-lapse video in the future. But thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Skippen, and I'll see you guys next time.